And you're good?
I'm good.
Your beard's getting a little bit of gray in it. I think both of us actually.
Yes, yes.
It's been a
That's
while.
experience.
It's not there. I like that. I look at my hands sometimes. I'm like, I have dad hands. I have like 60-year-old hands, but I identify as 47,
I'll take it.
which is a thing you can do. And I like your shirt. It's
It's a
interesting.
very nice shirt. I got it at a great conference I was at last year.
Why? If it was so great, then why are you not coming back this year?
Sometimes you can have just too much of a good thing.
No, you got to be somewhere else, right?
I
Yeah.
do have to be
Okay.
somewhere else, so
Yeah, but I appreciate you jumping online and chatting because if there's anybody who can kind of pick my brain about this, it's Carl. And if I ask my kids, they go, "I hate AI." If I ask people older than me, they're like, "Yeah, that's very interesting. I think I like that." And actually, there's a large firm in New Zealand that did a internal survey, and the under like the 20 somethings, the lower 20 somethings, had negative things to say about it, and the older PMs were like, "Oh yeah, this is great." And I thought, yeah, because older people know how to delegate. And so this is just another way to delegate.
hmm
So so how are you doing? What's going on?
I'm doing all right. Staying busy, staying out of trouble. You're very
Only
timely
one of
in.
those could be correct.
That's true. It's like that.
Yeah,
You can have one, two of three things. You can have it fast. You can have it cheap. You can have it good, but you can't have all three. Just pick two.
right. Except with Enscape. I find that all three and not expensive.
Well, there you
Fast,
go.
easy, beautiful. When I saw Enscape, I thought, oh, this is an edge condition. You don't normally get fast, easy, beautiful, or busy and out and staying out of trouble. Sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly
And
like that.
so introduce yourself for the three people that don't know who Carl is.
Well, I'm sure the number's a little bigger than that, but my name is Carl Storms. I'm a God, they keep changing it. Technical success manager for Nuforma, but I've been in the BIM, the AECO industry for a little over 25 years now, which is scary to say it out loud. Um,
Yeah.
I've spoke at a conference or two in my day. In fact, they have a new rule for Autodesk this year. We're gonna call it the Carl rule that you can only submit
Yes,
3 sessions this year, which was
that's right.
so disappointing to see.
But and how do you choose?
Well, that was the thing. I guess now I have to. In the past, I mean, one year I actually submitted 25, so I didn't choose, but I can see how that's
No,
more work for them.
and you show up and you bring your documentation and you're prepared. But it's like we want you to have the same thing used to happen at Built, right? We would say, okay, well, Carl can have two or three classes because we want you to have fun. And but it's not like a newbie submitting five classes and getting accepted, which I think was one year at Autodesk University. I think I did like five classes, but you have to show up, and you always show up. But you'll have time for coffee now. You've already,
Yes,
yeah, yes, and it's in September and Nashville. I'm all
all things that are
confused.
different. Yes, that
I
are
know.
not the norm.
We just had a large firm roundtable meeting in Nashville, and actually from the hotel we were meeting in downhill to that strip, it was really fun, and I think people are going to love it.
I've never been, so I am kind of excited to go and check it out, and with no more than 3 classes, so it'll be relaxing.
No more than three. Oh, no, that's good. That's good. I'll give you my so far feeling about AI because I'm going to host a session because I don't know everything about it. And to be honest, I'm skeptical, Dad, about it. And I explained it on Twitter the other day after I hit the wall trying to do something. Uh, AI to me is like a passive aggressive teenager that you ask to do a chore. So it's like, hey, could you please vacuum the house? And it comes back and it says, oh, I finished vacuuming the house. And then you're like, look, you didn't vacuum under the table. Oh, I'm sorry. I'd love to vacuum under the table. I've just finished vacuuming under the tables. And then you go, look, but under the couches, you haven't vacuumed under the couches. I'd be glad to vacuum under the couches. Thank you so much for asking, right? It's always that kind of thing. And then it goes, I'm vacuuming under the couches. And it's like, no, no, no. There's still all these areas. Could you just vacuum the whole place? And finally, the passive aggressive teenager says, hey, I vacuumed out the fireplace. Let me know if there's anything I could do. You're like, so what I'm finding is that it's good at doing something very good enough, and it's seldom good at doing something explicit. And the only thing I've got it to do explicit is I need a formula for Excel. And getting a bad answer and then going, oh, I don't need it for Excel. I actually need it for Apple numbers. It's like, oh, thank you very much. I'd be glad to give you this formula for numbers. And then it works. So something like that, it's just a more intelligent search. And I think calling it AI is just, it's a weird naming convention. It's just like ask search a question. Like we used to have a Google search bar. And now we just type it in the top bar when you want something. Um, so the problem that I have with it, Carl, and talk me out of this impression so far, is that when you ask it to do something, it's good at doing something very good enough where you don't need a, an explicit correct answer. Because otherwise you have to explain in detail what you want, or you don't get it. Because the first thing you get is something, oh, I didn't want that. Let me clarify. And you keep clarifying and keep clarifying. So what have referred to it so far as AI stands for architectural interns. And if you ask an architectural intern to do something, the best you'll get is very good enough. And then you have that meeting and you sit down and you look at everything, go, okay, what about this? If we do this, how does it, oh, and then that's the learning that they have, that they're going through in their career, going from architectural intern to experienced, project manager and team manager. So I'm not finding it a threat. If anything, in most cases, I find it an annoyance, because if I ask it to do something and get very good enough, but I presume that it's giving me an accurate, explicit answer, and I don't review the information, when you finally get a chance to review it, I'm like, oh, great. Now I have to untangle wet spaghetti. That's my metaphor. If you've ever tried to untangle wet spaghetti, it just breaks. It's just a mess. And you're like, I should have just done this deliberately. Yes, it would have been not necessarily fun, but it would have been done explicitly right, as opposed to very good enough. And oh my gosh, I missed that really important detail right. And now I can't use what it gave me, and I thought I could. So what are you finding? Like, what is your experience here?
Well, you bring up some valid points, and I think it comes back to how you look at it, and
Right.
understanding that very good enough mentality. And so the same sort of thing when you think back to the idea of it being like an architectural intern. If you think back to when you had architectural interns,
Carbon-based AI, architectural intern.
carbon-based, yeah, that's right, and you were
Yeah.
the one giving them tasks. When you give them those tasks and they bring you back an answer that's okay, you're going to sort of take the time to say, okay, this is good, but this could get better. And
Right.
AI is no different. And the frustration that comes from it is from the assumption
You've
that
had
it's
this
going to.
frustration. I mean, you've done a lot of homework into different tools, so you understand this as well, like firsthand.
I do. And the
Yeah.
growing comes from the frustration. So there's two answers to that. One is that the frustration is going to lead to two things. One, AI sucks. I'm not going to use it anymore, and you go away and you do it the old way. But like learning any new tool, remember the first time you ever used Revit, there's a learning curve, and sometimes it's a very steep learning curve, especially if you have a process in place that's different, the carbon-based life form, if you will. The other thing that comes from it is if you don't let the frustration win, if you spend a little time understanding what it's going to give you, understand that there's different options out there. So
Mm.
maybe using Revit, maybe using ArchiCAD, maybe AutoCAD is good enough for this task. So understanding that, because different AIs are better at different things. That's a
Yeah.
given. But the other scenario there, and I have a comic that I found somewhere online. I can't give credit because I don't know where it came from. But it sort of talks about, in this case, they're talking about using AI to help you code. I'm a coding
Right.
novice that knows enough to know I don't know anything. But the
Right.
idea is that if you don't know how to code and you can do what they call vibe coding now, I don't know why I used air quotes, but it seemed needed there. But when you're doing vibe coding, is hey, ChatGPT, make me a website, and it does. You're like, this is the best thing ever. and you
Right.
realize
That's
that's
yeah, that's the what did Chris Zug used to call it? Like the stages of Revit where you go, oh my gosh, this is amazing, I can do anything. And then you go, oh shit, I don't know how to do anything.
identical because you get that website and you're like, this is perfect. And then you realize that 3 lines down, the name of the company is spelt wrong. And you have no idea how to change the name of the company in the code. So you ask
Right.
ChatGPT or whatever to change the name. And it's a 15-minute conversation back and forth. Every time they say they changed it, every time they didn't, you get frustrated. And so finally it gets to the point where, this is no good. I'm going to pay somebody to do the website, or I'm going to do something else.
Right.
The flip side is if you have a coder, a software engineer, someone that's gone and done this and understands how to do it themselves, they have the exact reversed outcome. That first time they're like, this is a simple answer. I can do better than this. I don't need this. But they keep using it and they realize, okay, there is some value to this. It definitely did this stuff I don't like doing very quickly. And then they get to the
Right.
stage, just like with Revit, is that, there are some things it's good at, things that it's not good at, but the stuff that it's good at, it can do very quickly, and it can save me time to do stuff that I want to do. And when you think of AI in that same scenario, that it's not going to reinvent the world, it's not going to do everything you want exactly right all the time, but some things, especially after you've acclimatized to how to get it to do it the proper way,
Right.
is going to do it right the
But
majority of the
isn't
time
that
and save you
it's
time.
part it's part of the frustration, and I like your term, it doing what you want. Nothing does what you want. It does what you tell it. And the kind of explicit language you have to use to tell it is where I hit the wall, because I think there's so much nonverbal communication between carbon-based AI that we just get it. Like, have you seen the video of the kid who's trying to teach his dad to make a peanut butter sandwich with a list of rules? And the thing is like, put the peanut butter on the bread. And the dad takes the jar and puts it on the bread. I'll have to find the video. And then he goes, no, no, no. He goes, well, that's what it says. He goes, okay. And then the next thing is like, put the knife in the peanut butter, put the peanut butter on the bread. And the dad puts the knife in the peanut butter and puts the jar on the bread. He's like, no, no, no. And they go through this iteration. I'm like, yeah, that's how I feel with AI. That's like, you have to give it such explicit rules in at times. And almost that's a human artifact where you go, I could explain how to do this, but I could just do it myself. Like, where the diminished returns? So, like, where do you
Well,
find that it's, that back and forth? Because to me, for the coder, for someone that has the explicit institutional knowledge and they can get very good enough without having to untangle spaghetti, this is a fantastic tool. Like, I've used Suno for mixing music. I like using Magnific and Varus and Midjourney for creating images, um, because they're kind of very good enough, and I don't need it. Like, I'm not going to spend the time with AI after it's rendered a sketch and say, oh, the handrail isn't straight. Please straighten the handrail. It's just like I want this emotional metaphor, but for explicit tasks, it still seems like I need the carbon-based AI, someone who really understands the nonverbal communication. You don't have to, like, you can, it will do what you want. The human will do what you want better than the AI does what you want. That's what I'm trying to get at.
so that's true now. Is it going to
Right.
be in 5, 10, 20 years? Who knows? Depends on
Right.
who you talk
Okay.
to.
Fair enough.
The flip side to that, though, is if you keep working with AI, if you keep
Mm.
getting frustrated, um, you'll find that, well, if you stick with it, you're starting to get less frustrated. You'll also find that this is
Yeah.
going to
True.
lead you to be a better communicator in general because you're having to work at very specific instructions a very specific way. So it's almost like learning to listen, except now we're learning to talk. And the fact that a lot of them now are allowing us to actually turn on the microphone and talk to it, I don't know if it's helping or hurting,
Yeah.
but it's getting
I
there.
like the
Now,
microphone because in the middle of the description that I get back, I go, no, no, no. Okay, actually focus on that area. What is it about this? And I love that dialogue. I love being able to ask a question and say, answer me in the persona of this person. What would this person say? Like that kind of historical dialogue. I love that. but that's
Well,
not necessarily explicit.
well, and you're also going to find that as you do that with particular LLMs that you're using, you're going to find particular prompts that work with that LLM, that work with your request. And if
Okay.
you're looking for just good enough, or the idea that it's something creative where I don't need it to be 1+1 = 2, I want a red sun with flowers and a purple bunny, and it gives you something close enough. Hey, that's
Right.
fine. Um, but if we go back to the software engineer that's working with something like Claude, where it'll give you some code, but then it will give you the actual code. The difference is that I can now take that code if I am of the skill set, and I can find a layer and I can tweak it. So 90% of the work is done. I know how to tweak that 10%, and it gives it to me that I can tweak it. Whereas with
Right.
images, at least at this stage for most of them, there's nothing I can really do with it. Either it's right or it's wrong, although that is changing very, very
Yeah, you can
rapidly.
start to tweak it a little bit. And so what I'm seeing is the FUD whenever there's a new technology, whether we're making shoes with machines or golf shirts or cars, it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to take my job. I don't know that the senior. So here's the existing paradigm, like the carbon-based AI. We sit in a room and the designer starts sketching and we start talking about the client's brief and we start discussing site ideas and how things might fit. And the whole time the senior is sketching and he's describing or she's describing. And when we get to the end of that 2 hour meeting, we take all of this paper and it goes to the architectural interns. And this long discussion that's been, right, we've been taking notes, that converts to a text prompt. And so I don't know that the senior person who's probably less patient than me is going to use this tool unless they're a solo practitioner. What I expect or what I'm seeing happening is they're still having this meeting, they're still sketching, and then they're giving it to the carbon-based intern to then, with their expertise of how these tools are using it, how they're using these tools, they're then leveraging the silicon-based architectural intern to get them to a point that's good enough. Because what was happening up until a very short while ago is you would have to model something explicitly, and then you would have to render it explicitly. And that shifted to where you could model explicitly, or maybe just do a massing study with a text prompt, and then render it kind of very good enough. And things were smudgy, but that's the nature of a sketch, right? Things are smudgy, but the emotional feedback of that image, like things being in focus and foreground and background and atmospheric effects and time of day, like those lighting effects, that's an 80-hour effort for somebody who knows how to model explicitly and render explicitly. But what's happening now, you're not even modeling. You can sketch gesturally, create a text prompt, and then get something that's an emotional vector, dozens in a morning, and then have a meeting and talk about that kind of, where are we trying to head? What's the vector of this? Where are some interesting ideas? I like the way that AI doesn't do what you ask because it often creates, there's often things that you wouldn't have planned deliberately that are like, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't think about that. We should go down that path a little bit. So where I see this going, and maybe convince me otherwise, is the most experienced designers are not going to necessarily use AI in organizations. They're going to still have these conversations. They're going to give it to the carbon-based team who then uses it with the silicon-based tools to get responses in a day as opposed to 2 weeks.
Yeah, I can see that, and that's no different than the way it's always been. There's someone passing the task down and delegating. It's just like what you said at the beginning. It's all about delegation.
That's what we've
Um,
always done. We're not
so
doing anything different. Yeah, we're just delegating down again.
yeah,
Because who do the interns delegate to? They can't
well,
delegate.
and that's exactly it. So it's changing along the way. It's giving us a little bit more answers. And you brought up a good point about sometimes when we're taking a sketch and having AI give me an image back, it's not what I expected. It's similar to when all the rage was, generative design, and we could generate 3,000 options in Mario Twisty Towers, and
Right, right,
A,
right.
3,000 is too many, but B, random stuff sometimes sparks something else. and you can use AI in that same term. I work from a home office by myself, and sometimes I'll literally have a conversation with the AI, and it will just spit out random stuff. I'm like, okay, and then I'll just ask it to give me 5 more, and they're different. It's a different, like,
based on that direction.
correct. It's, you ask it a
Yeah.
question, it gives you 5, and then you can either say, just give me 5 more, and it'll give me 5 completely different, or 5 based on option 2, or 5 based on option 3. And it's having that, it gets your brain working. And that's the thing that I think people, when they get that, they have that aha moment. It's not going to take my
Yeah.
job. It's not going to do whatever, but it gives you that ability. And just like if you're, I can build a square box with some hammers and nails, but if I want a really good, piece of furniture that I'm going to pass down, I'm going to go to the craftsman. That hasn't changed. Using a
Right.
5-axis
Right.
CNC machine isn't the same thing. So it's still there. We still have that. And I think even more so, the
That says the
craftsmen, the
guy with the
craftspeople,
3D printer in the
there's 2
background,
of them.
right?
That was my next point. This is the Ender 3 V2. The first generation that made 3D printing a lot of fun. This is the new
Right.
Bamboo Labs. It makes 3D printing really easy, and so now I 3D print a lot again because of that. AI is going to be the same
Right.
way.
Yeah. Yeah. I liked it. I like this concept that you used of the spark. Like sometimes it's just a blank sheet and all of a sudden you get the muse just gives you a little thing. And the number of times I only know how to compare this to other creative industries. Um, but if you read about music, the creation of music, how like Keith Richards is just noodling in the studio and he's got this little riff and Jagger goes, that's kind of interesting. Like, let's follow that. And the next thing you've got a song that is 50 years old and it's a standard. And that happened with the Beatles. Like, they're just, McCartney would have a bit of something on the piano and then the music would pour out. They're like, oh, yes, it takes us a long time to write songs. But there was this one time where I was just noodling this chord progression and that song was written in 10 minutes. Like, those kinds of moments is what I really love about AI, where I'm not asking for something explicit and correct, but I want a vector. And I'm okay because if my and no, don't have false expectations. Don't have the expectation that it's going to be correct because it can't do what I think. It can only do what I tell it. And sometimes I don't even know how to tell it what I want to tell it. And And if I think about it in those terms, and if other people who, I mean, you can't open LinkedIn without another AI, some FUD clickbait article popping up. But if you think about it in terms of this is just another 3D printer, you still have to have someone with explicit knowledge. It's not a big deal. Like, it's just that we, maybe as humans, we like to, we're drawn to the emergency kind of, FUD. Oh my gosh, AI is going to do this thing. But very good enough. And I'm not saying lower the expectations, but just set them based on some experience. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
But it is frustrating if my expectations are, I want it to do this explicit task and it keeps getting close enough. And I think we're
Uh,
still going to delegate. Like, I don't know any other way. Have you found anything that's just spot
no,
on every time? Okay, fair enough.
no. You're going to you're gonna get frustrated, but you're gonna learn ways around it. And one thing that makes us
Right.
very different, and this conversation is going to prove that, is that as you were chatting there, I had 3 different streams of consciousness that I was going down. AI doesn't do that. It doesn't lose focus, so that it goes in
Oh,
one part. So
yeah.
it's not going. I'm thinking, well, we should do this. And we're having those conversations independent of each other in parallel. So that's a whole different thing. And this is your $1 million idea. We were talking about Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and noodling. Well, they can't do that anymore. So like Kiss, they're going to upload their intelligence to AI and keep playing concerts after they're dead. But what if you could share your ChatGPT profile with me? So you customize it so it gives you the answers that you want. But I want to have that back and forth conversation, but I want to have it with Phil, not with
I
ChatGPT.
don't know
So
why we can't do that now because
well,
if
exactly.
you take Twitter plus LinkedIn plus whatever social media, plus if you know what books I read, you could probably get a lot of a lot of you could get pretty close. Like, what
Well,
would
and
Phil say about this, or what would Carl say about this? Do
that's
I
the
pay for
thing.
Carl, the virtual Carl?
I
The
don't
the
want I don't want the presumed version of Phil. I want Phil's version of Phil, which
well,
probably is going to be a
okay,
little different. Probably going to be
No,
a little
million
different, but I
dollar
want that.
idea. I like this. I like this path. So the client can't sit in my office 24/7 every day. They're busy. Now, if we could do a little psychologic A/B testing, do you like this? Do you like this? This? I bet you could build a persona of that client and it could interact with your design and give you feedback that's not 100%, but it's on vector. And then when your client can meet every 2 weeks, they're not going to be surprised in a bad way, right? Because you've
Yes.
had that conversation with them. You've built that LLM based on looking at pictures or however you figure that out. Like
And
that, I
what's
see that
happening?
could happen. Like Autodesk could
Absolutely.
build that where they go, okay, we're going to build a tool that captures the client's persona and build an LLM that'll be able to interact with your Revit file. And when you have design decisions, A, B, I don't know if we go this way or this way, you might still do what you want to do because that's based on my experience. But I could see architectural school doing that, where instead of having one professor in studio, I could have a studio with Steve Jobs. I could have a studio with historic figures. You could have a studio with Marcus Aurelius. What would Martha Stewart say about my design? Like that's where
Well,
I think it gets really interesting. Um,
I,
do
I
you think
think it
we'll charge for
does.
that? Would it be the Carl? Like I would pay subscription to get the Carl persona?
You would until someone open sources it and then someone else does it and you can scrape it. It's one of those things where
Yeah,
it starts. But what we're finding right now during this exact conversation, and I noticed this back in my days of starting to learn AI, is that AI, if you do something right, it's going to save you time. Instead of taking 2 weeks, it took that intern a day to do it. But
right.
that does not preclude you from going down an AI rabbit hole and taking just as long, because now I've got 50 different ideas and I've done 50 different sketches and 50 different programs to see what's the
I've
best,
done it for two
and I've
weeks
circled
anyway.
right back. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, fair
So
enough.
we're our own worst enemy, that carbon-based AI.
Yeah. Yeah, we do like to come up with ideas at the last moment. And I think it's the stress of the last moment that kind of gives us that creative spark.
So we can
Like it,
create the just good enough answer because we don't have time to get the perfect answer.
yeah.
See, we're
Okay,
just
fair
like
enough.
AI.
I like it. I mean, I do think, I've always, even in the early days of Revit, I would say we've always had BIM. It's called staff. And you'd have those meetings, you send all red lines out, and you come back in 2 weeks and things are done. Or you could have this, Revit, I could move something in the plan and it moved in elevation. Well, now I don't, you're still telling it to do something, but it's not involving as many people. But you still, but projects still struggle to get out the door on the time because now we're doing more stuff at the last minute, right? We can change anything. Okay, well, let's
Hmm.
change anything at the last minute. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. As I look back on 25 years, don't want to be changing things at the last minute. I thought we were, yeah, yeah. Any other particular tools that you really like? I mean, what keeps you coming back? What's out there that's proved interesting? Just give me a scatter chart.
I've really just the LLMs keep tweaking. I've done a lot of sort of vibe coding. I'm using Claude
Hmm.
3.5, now 3.7. It does a really good job, which led me to the new IDEs like Cursor, for example. If you do any coding, it's like VS Code, which is open sourced. They
Right.
took it, recreated it almost line for line, but put a very smart LLM into it. So you don't have to copy and paste. You can actually have a conversation with your code um, to recreate it. Another one that's really cool is something called Napkin AI, and
Okay.
you'll like this one because the idea is that you put in a topic. Um, Give me, and you can ask it. It's an LLM. You can say, give me the top 5 dog breeds, and then each bullet point it'll give you
Right.
a little lightning bolt, and you can click on that, and it will give you a plethora of infographics, charts, graphs, color schemes instantly. And you can pick it and then you can tweak it. Well, I want, this is my company color scheme. This would have, and it's like, yeah, it's crazy how it'll do that and put it in place and put it all together. So if you're creating a fancy newsletter or whatever, it's very quick and intuitive, and it does a really good job because it's not trying to make something photorealistic or really quickly. It's got 50 different sets that it uses, 50 different types, and it can generate that stuff very quickly. It's like generative AI when it came out, or generative design,
Right.
but in a form for that. So
Have
it's
you
someone that doesn't
found
have the skills.
for
I
someone that doesn't
appreciate
have
that.
the skills? Yeah.
Like I can't do Illustrator or any of those fancy Adobe products, so intrigues me.
Oh, yeah. To explicitly know which tool does which thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do. I found it interesting that the AI that I've used is sometimes positive to the point of suspicion. It's like, oh, I would love to do that. Let me do this thing. And so I found myself when I first started using Chat GPT and was getting audio, video, audio feedback. It was like asking to do things. And I think it was Kerry Thompson, in New Zealand, where he asked it to to describe a website. And it was all about, for the best in the world, go to this. And he had to, no, you got to turn it back a little bit. For music, I find it's amazing because the AI, when it delivers those lyrics and creates music, it is so earnest. Like it just sounds like they're nailing it, much more than uh, uncertain musicians. If you're writing something and it's that creative vulnerability of where you're showing something, showing the lyrics and trying to figure out the music and chord progressions. And it's like, yeah, I'm trying to figure this out. I don't know if I like it. And it takes other people to go, oh, no, I think this is pretty good. But with AI, like they nail it. They come out of the gate singing. Amazing. Um, but I found that with Chat GPT and others, the first thing I do is say, could you just tone it down a bit? Could you like not be so enthusiastic? Because I just want the quiet conversation. I don't want, oh, I'd be glad to vacuum your house. This is the best thing I've ever done. I can't wait to be done vacuuming. It's just like, all right, curb your enthusiasm. And it's like, oh, I'll be glad to just turn it down a bit. Like it will do that. Because yeah, first thing in the morning, over happy AI, we just have to turn it down.
So for those first thing in the morning conversations, have you tried Pi? Pi.ai.
No.
So it was developed, and I can't remember the name of the company. They've done a few other things out of San Francisco, but it's supposed to be sort of like an emotional AI, and it's really much more like having a conversation with a person. It's much more um, toned down. It's not over the top. So it's great for those creative things or conversation that you're having. When I just want
Right.
to like spell check an email or double check that this is right, it's my go-to. And it doesn't do all the
I
fancy
dot
stuff the other ones do.
pi
Yeah,
dot AI.
yeah.
I don't know that we're going to have to ask it to do that kind of thing for much longer. Like it's going to read your pulse rate on your watch and then go, hey, you want me to run a bath on your way home? Like it's just,
It's getting close.
yeah. Can I go ahead and fix you a gin and tonic? You're about 5 minutes away. It's like, you know what? Thanks. That'd be great. Appreciate that. Anyway, thanks, Carl. Look great. I'm sorry you're not going to be there. Hope you be there maybe in the fall at the leadership event. And stay close.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's been a blast as always.
All right, buddy. Take care.
All right.
That's it. That's all we had to do.